Gaska is a Lockheed Martin Senior Fellow in the Research and Technology Organization. And since 2015, she has chaired the America Makes Additive Manufacturing for Maintenance and Sustainment Advisory Group. Welcome, Marilyn. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to share what we've been up to. So I'll go into presentation mode and hopefully you can see everything. So I'm going to talk with two hats, a little bit my Lockheed Martin hat and a little bit of what I've been doing in terms of collaboration for the aerospace and defense application. But when you focus and you're asked, how does this help sustainment? You really have to get involved with the engineering side. But I will tell everybody, I don't press the button on any of the machines like some of the prior speakers. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick overview of what I've been doing since 2015.
Hey, Marilyn.
And how we shape to establish, use cases for AM.
Marilyn, are you actually sharing the screen because it's not up?
Pardon me?
Are you trying to share your screen because we're not seeing anything?
You're not seeing it. Okay. How about now?
There we go. That's it.
Okay, oops, I just hit the wrong. All right, sorry. Share again. Okay, let me see. You can still see it? Maybe when I went into presentation mode, I lost it? Okay.
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how getting involved with America Makes got us into working with OSD in terms of war games and workshops on additive, and then how we're continuing to collaborate with the customer set. There's a lot of talk about printing things at the point of need and talk about that, and then a little bit of the Lockheed inside. Okay. And throughout this, I'm going to recognize there are a lot of women who aren't on the agenda for TIPE 2022 that have been involved, and I've highlighted them throughout to give credit to all the women that have helped with this effort. So I was asked as an Aerospace Industry Association member by Defense Acquisition University to co-author with another industry rep, which was Dr. Teresa Clement from Raytheon, an article in the special edition on additive manufacturing in AT&L magazine. So, I put links in and can get access to this in terms of a guide. But, I put in this presentation article an industry use case value chain, because there are a lot of things for sustainment for additive in terms of tooling, parts in the field, design for additive early on, thinking in terms of sustainment using model-based, the business case, the digital thread. So it's not just printing the part. There's a whole ecosystem. And that's how this was in 2016, started to shape the game, and then showed this at NDIA in 2018. So in 2015, I volunteered to chair the new working group for America Makes in maintenance sustainment. And just as if you're not familiar with America Makes, this is a public-private partnership, the first Manufacturing USA Institute. And Ed Morris, who was the retired Lockheed Martin director at corporate, he had retired and gone over to America Makes. We had a little chat and nobody else volunteered, and I was it. So we then really did a lot of things in the value chain to co-chair additive manufacturing business model, war games and workshops, and then start to work on those issues of how to really get this in practice. And then Dr. Michael Gorelick from FAA and I have done a number of expert design sessions and different efforts in terms of the Aircraft Award and Sustainment Conference. We sponsored an AM parts family working group that is now a project with America Makes that ASTM is leading. And so also identify different standards that are needed for the total picture. So just to highlight, Stephanie Gaffney from Youngstown Business Incubator, as well as Melanie Lang, who has been engaged with us on the America Makes side, and she's obviously our overall moderator today from Form Alloy, and Kimberly Gibson, as we speak, from America Makes, is on another track talking about the ecosystem, and she just joined America Makes in October. So I just wanted to highlight the Parts Family Working Group. We established this as follow-on to the some of the problems we talked about of not doing all these as one-offs for qualification certification, and how do we have a parts family approach. And so we worked through this in our sustainment working group, and then we said this is bigger than just sustainment. This is really everything that you're doing in terms of design for AM, et cetera. And we got this engaged with the FAA, now EASA workshops, and now ASTM is working on a Rapid Innovation Fund project that they won from America Makes. It just started this year. So Susan Mooring from TechSolve was active in this group, and we sort of shaped the requirements for that effort. And I also presented on a panel at ASTM in terms of sustainment to talk about why parts family was important in terms of the standards approach. So we've also been working, as I mentioned, not just with ASTM, but in terms of ANSI road mapping for what are the roadmaps that the standards development organizations, SDOs, should work on that would help AM in general. So there are documents there, and I did participate in the version 1 and version 2 workshops, as well as the ASTM meeting. And I saw in the past presentation from the NASA team, they had cold spray on the list. And that's one of the things that some people, if you go by religion of this, don't consider cold spray an additive process. But in the sustainment world, we do consider that. And part of this is working through to make sure that's included in the standards and addressed in terms of additive repairs and cold spray. So I mentioned up front working with OSD and America Makes in terms of some of the workshops and war games. But about the same time we started the working group with America Makes, DOD in the maintenance sustainment side also started an AM for maintenance operations ammo group. So while their group doesn't have to be a member and to participate of America Makes, we've tried to be collaborative in terms of I go to their meetings, they come to my meetings, and we have co-chaired with my America Makes hat and the OSD hat some of these different events that we've held together. We've also then leveraged some of the OSD commercial technologies for maintenance activities efforts, and really then aligned as this evolved and they started to have the DoD Joint Additive Manufacturing Working Group. We've aligned with all of those efforts to co-host the AM War Games and Workshops. So Debbie Lilu, another woman in additive, is the NCMS Vice President that's on the ammo side, coordinating a lot of that for OSD on that end. So, and we've also been working with Defense Acquisition University in terms of their community of practice. So just to talk about the America Makes Additive Manufacturing War Games and Workshop timeline, I just listed, we started this in 2016 and just an idea. Could you apply, wargaming to identify all the issues in getting additive accepted? So there's a series of reports, and we had 2 years of war games. We moved it to DC from the Suffolk, Virginia. We hosted at a Lockheed Martin Global Vision Center, but then with COVID, we continued on the last 2 years virtual. And we've really been trying to work industry and government, nonprofits, et cetera, collaboratively to address some of the issues. And some of these things then have helped shape some of the policies we'll get to in another chart. So Kelly Visconti has now moved over to Department of Energy, but she has been really instrumental in a lot of the last couple of years of efforts supporting research and engineering, Mantech, under Tracy Frost. And with these reports, we did get, OSD, R&E, and A&S all coming to the outbriefs and then taking on some of the issues and aligning these efforts with government people working the rest of the year on some of these issues like qualification and certification. So I highlight that in the middle because that's a common problem, whether it's sustainment or design up front of how do you qualify. So for some of that work, as well as other efforts, I was part of the first 2017 Ambassador Award, so I have my ambassador pin, but not my medal. But, I've had the opportunity as an ambassador to represent America Makes at some of the different conferences and present our results to some of the efforts. Deloitte was very involved at the first war game, and then they had us present the results, and then gotten to be on keystone panels with the government at things like the Aircraft Award and Sustainment Conference, as well as talking about additive as an industry rep for the Joint Staff in terms of a meeting at the Pentagon when we still could go for these meetings. So Teresa, who's standing next to me, she and I co-authored that first article in the ATLNL magazine, but this really was recognizing collaboration leadership between industry and government together. So from some of these workshops and war games, the DoD has actually evolved to have a strategy, policy, implementation plans that are now available. And these strategies, as well as the instructions for implementation, are out there on the internet, and some guidance is still in draft. But I think all of these efforts are consistent with the approach that Kelly talked about, representing Mantech and the JAMWIG in terms of the strategic approach in the DoD to additive manufacturing, in terms of going from strategies to guidebooks to service-specific implementation campaign plans, etc. So just to highlight a little bit more specifically on some things with America Makes, this gets us into pictures of some additive parts. America Makes has had the maturation of advanced manufacturing for low-cost sustainment or mammals project for over a 4-year period, phase 1, 2, and 3. And so I got Lockheed Martin engaged in terms of project phase 1 that was really looking at some low-hanging fruits of rapid tooling. And we worked with Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex on a C5 tooling, worked with Sikorsky in terms of metal castings, which is another type of tooling with Sikorsky. In phase 2, we started to work with Hill Air Force Base on one of our planes with the intent of flying a part. And working with the government on the F-22, we actually did fly the part there. And Brian Rosenberger, a senior fellow who's now also on the America Makes executive board, was involved working through that part flying. And there were press releases out when it flew. And then the third phase focused, we were involved with an ad manufacturing defect analysis project. So LM fellow Tara Thomason, who came to Lockheed from the additive world and is doing some other things now, she was key in establishing some of the initial involvement and getting this through our aeronautics group. And so I just want to recognize her. But in general, that effort from mammals did get an award for manufacturing technology in the area of readiness improvement at the Defense Manufacturing Conference in 2019. And I happened to be there and as one of the team members that got pulled into the picture. But this really was a project that got recognition for NCDMM, the parent for America Makes, as well as OSD Mantech, all the services in collaboration with America Makes, and AFRL. And we were very happy to participate through our in-kind funding through America Makes. So the Air Force has had their own advanced manufacturing Olympics under Dr. Roper. And if you missed that, they had to go virtual because of COVID in 2020. But that was led by the Rapid Sustainment Office with industry participation. So we did get, all of our additive crew engaged in terms of Lockheed Martin participating in some of the challenges. Some of that is still out there in terms of reports and some of the videos. But speakers and judges included Ms. Angela Timofichuk, who worked for Dr. Roper when he was still there, and he was the sponsor of this. And she's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Logistics and Product Support, but she's very involved in the overarching group for the advanced manufacturing through Air Force in terms of the sustainment area. Okay, one other service, other than I've talked a lot of Air Force, has been the Army in terms of collaboration. And we're involved in a couple of different efforts with the Army in advanced manufacturing, including additive, including a member of the Army Research Lab, NCMS, Advanced Manufacturing Materials and Process Program and Consortium. It has different project calls, including additive projects. And then AmNow is a program with the Army in Huntsville and looking at the supply chain in terms of DoD contractors. And we're involved in terms of one of our parts from Sikorsky being a sample part that can be printed by additively. And also working in terms of participating as an OEM with additive manufacturing workshops that have been held with the OEMs. And there's articles out there in the public. And so a number of women, Ashley is the program manager for AmNow. Rebecca Taylor's an executive vice president with NCMS that's been involved with this consortium with AMMP. And Army, Catherine Olson, has been involved with the AM workshop and lead for Army Aviation Additive. Whoops. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, went too fast here. Okay, I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes. There's a lot of focus of can we print additive parts at the point of need instead of having to have lots of parts that you're not sure what you'll need. So we're not quite there yet, but I just wanted to give a few examples across the board in terms of interest at the depot point of need with the Air Force Sustainment Centers and the Air Logistics Complexes, Naval Fleet Readiness Centers, and I think you're going to hear in the next presentation some efforts. And then Army Rock Island Arsenal has a joint manufacturing technology center with a lot of additive capabilities. So you have depot, which is not necessarily deployed. Then you have the deployed efforts and a lot of press in terms of all of the services printing parts at whether deployed or at Air Force bases as well as NATO. And then you have the supply chain aspects with Defense Logistics Agency and a lot of efforts they're doing, including how to share the models for the parts across the services. And they're working with America Makes on the joint additive manufacturing model exchange. And DLA has other transaction agreements for accelerating implementation, including printer management. So while we aren't at the ecosystem briefing by my America Makes colleague that's on another track, this is really a total ecosystem of everybody getting involved if you're going to talk about point of need additive. But how do you qualify those parts and certify those parts is continuing to be a question, and even in terms of, less than full life repairs to get home, et cetera. And so this was a chart that I pulled together to talk about the issue with ASTM, but in general, there's a need for standards and approaches that can accelerate tech transfer, the point of need application. And it's not just the additive community got to get on board. You have to get the people who are going to qualify, certify, and allow you to fly parts, use parts on board in terms of how they're tied into the total ecosystem. Okay. So my last slide, so we have some time for questions, is just going internal. We had a team, including Maggie Gutierrez, who just retired from Lockheed Martin, who was very active in terms of additive manufacturing for sustainment. And this has been recognized in terms of our Enterprise Operations Excellence Awards in 2020 for what we had done, because it's fine to be involved with all these things externally, but when you work in industry, you do want to figure out how to make it apply to your own internal business. So this has really been a team focus with colleagues, both men and women. I just highlighted Maggie since this is women in 3D printing. And, we have really worked hard to integrate a sustainment perspective in the additive manufacturing efforts across all of our business areas and working with both engineering technology and the ManTech internal group. And also have several cooperative research and development agreements with the Navy, and Heather Woodworth is engaged in our Sikorsky group with some of the things we do with NavAir as a manufacturing technology engineer. And then we're continuing an early career with additive manufacturing projects, and what we have is a Tri-Service Academy, CRADA, for a sustainment innovation competition with the 3 military academies. So then you're working with West Point, the Naval Academy, and the Air Force and some of those projects have included additive manufacturing. So then you're bringing early career team to appreciate. Okay, so with that, wanted to turn it over for any questions, Melanie, and discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marilyn, for that presentation. We do have a couple questions from the audience, and as we go through these, please feel free to add more. We have about 7 minutes left, so we should have plenty of time to answer your questions. The first question is, how can large companies help accelerate or adopt AM?
Okay, so I'm not sure if that question came in before or after I talked, but we're really working across the supply chain and trying to be a leader to address some of these issues, as I'd mentioned, in terms of some of the things like qualification, certification, testing, et cetera. So you can get involved externally as well as with your own supply chain. You have a lot of suppliers maybe who want to do additive, and you have to impact your business processes, both in terms of how you share the data and how you're going to manage the supply chain. So anyway, I've tried to be a spokesperson for the sustainment side of this, but very quickly you'll learn that if you're in sustainment, a lot of common issues I mentioned, you have to help work through this. And we can't do this without collaborating on the customer side as well, because the design authority, engineering authority for whether you can use these parts is really in the owner of the platforms in the DoD. But all of these things are common with commercial companies as well. So America Makes has that opportunity of not just being aerospace and defense, but looking at all industry and in collaboration for common problems. Okay, I hope that answers.
Thank you.
We'll get to a couple of the other questions first.
Okay, the next question is, what are some of the technology gaps you see related to sustainment efforts?
So some of the technology gaps, are part of the whole ecosystem of making sure you get the data right there in terms of the digital models. And there's some things, whether you consider that technology in terms of model exchanges, you need to have secure transfer, and you need to have confidence that the parts have not been altered in terms of cyber and all those issues. Some of the other technology challenges, beyond just qual cert, get to be how do you do things quickly at the time of need? What parts are candidates, which is not necessarily a technology issue, but a tool part selection process in terms of making it easier for the total ecosystem. And then, some of these parts, you have issues in terms of just making sure if you're going to be at the point of need in sustainment, you have training issues. That's not necessarily a technology issue, but you also have safety of doing things in the field in terms of, metal powders and all those types of things. So you do want technology that is fast and flexible. And so as you saw, there are a lot of different types of additive in what the NASA pictures showed. So you really do have to figure out which ones are good for sustainment and for what parts categories and families. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And you bring up a lot of good points there. And I think it just tells us that we still have more work to do. This next question is actually kind of two questions into one. The first part is, what are you most excited about related to AM? And the second part is, what new or emerging technologies do you see promise in?
Okay, well, I'm excited about the fact that, the repair side of life, not just the parts, is getting to be more acceptable. Some of the VRC and companies that do the repair sides have started to join America Makes, and we've had them talk in our America Makes Maintenance Statement Advisor group. So having a technology that looks more holistically at all advanced manufacturing, and whether it's in the definition of the types of additive or not, what's going to help us in terms of the business case. And the business case is just cost related as well as readiness. So you really want to look at both sides of the value proposition. Let's see, the second part was on the technology side.
What's some of the new and emerging that you're excited about or that you see promise?
So in the last 2 years of the DoD Maintenance Conference for the Innovation Challenge, there's been in each year a winner or of the top 6, and maybe not the final winner in both years, but in terms of new added technology. So it's the new kinds of machines that are coming out, some of which make it easier in the sustainment world, I think is exciting technology, and how they can be applied. You know, we've followed up in terms of having some of those companies come and speak to the Additive Manufacturing for Maintenance Sustainment Advisor Group. And on the, if anybody's interested, on the OSD ammo groups, different companies with some new technologies will come to the monthly meetings there as well. So for anybody in the audience that has a new technology they want to get out there in terms of across industries, take a look at it with the maintenance statement. You know, I think both of those monthly meetings are good to have like a 20-minute discussion of the technology and how it can apply to sustainment. But having people think, how does my technology apply for sustainment, and really think through that use case is one of the things I've focused on. Let's see.
Great,
so lots of technology and lots of machines, and just being out there on the TIPE page, I've gotten probably like a half a dozen LinkedIn things over the last couple of days to follow up with new technology.
Okay. Well, I think we have time for one more question before we end. And this question is related to Lockheed Martin. It says, LMC seems to produce a stable of incredible women. Are there specific employee groups and or programs in place that encourage women's development at Lockheed Martin? As a fellow Lockheed Martin employee, I can say, yes, they do. And thank you. Yes. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yeah, so I personally have been involved with trying to make sure, in terms of the technical track, to get to senior fellow for women, that we have a support network that we've started in the last couple of years. We've also aligned and have for Society for Women Engineers, an internal network for Lockheed Martin for Society for Women Engineers alignment for the Lockheed side. So it doesn't just end when you get out of SWE at the university level. So those are 2 areas. We also have women impact networks and different types of business groups for a number of different employee groups, and women is one of them. And that's not technical specific, that's also the management side. So those are just 3 examples that really help encourage development for women, and including those who want to stay on the technical track and not just go to the management side. Otherwise, we have other mentoring networks that are available that all fellows are supposed to do and make that available to employees. And we have earlier career leadership programs that we connect up and mentor. And that's men, women, all populations. I hope that helps.
Thanks a lot, Marilyn. There are some more questions, but please feel free to stick around for networking afterwards if you're able to, and maybe people will have a chance to ask you some more questions. But thanks again so much for your time.
You're welcome. And sorry I had a little sharing problem up front. Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.